My daughter's family lied about the flight date so I'd miss our Michigan trip. When I called from the airport, my son-in-law laughed and said, "Oh, sweetie, we're already at Torch Lake. Why didn't you come yesterday?" My hands shook, but I didn't cry. I went home, packed away the cookies I'd baked for my granddaughter, and started documenting every detail. The time, the ticket, the call. They thought the story ended at the gate. They had no idea it was just beginning. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I arrived at IAH just as the August heat began to fade behind the glass walls. The air smelled faintly of coffee and jet fuel. Rolling suitcases bumped against my leg as I searched for Gate C. My carry-on felt light, just a week's worth of clothes and a foil-wrapped tray of cinnamon cookies for the cabin trip. The overhead PA repeated something about final boarding to Denver. Screens flickered. I checked the time. 3:10 p.m. My daughter's text from 2 days ago still said Flight 2378, AUG 13, 3:20 p.m. Everything seemed in order, except for the small knot in my chest that refused to loosen. I called Dylan. The phone rang twice before his laugh filled my ear. "We're already at Torch Lake. Shannon, why didn't you come yesterday?" His voice had that lazy amusement people use when they think they're clever. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "Yesterday," I said softly. He chuckled again. "Guess you didn't read the group text. Enjoy Houston." The line clicked. I sat still, phone warm in my hand, people streaming past. My mouth was dry. I didn't say a word. I simply hung up. I canceled my boarding pass at the counter. The attendant smiled too brightly, unaware that my world had tilted outside. I caught the shuttle back to the parking lot. The cookie tin rested on my knees. Each bump in the road thudded like a heartbeat. By the time I reached my car, the shock had condensed into something tighter. Control. I turned the key, eyes dry, posture straight. There would be no tears in public, only quiet, at home. The late-day sun slanted across the kitchen tiles. I set my phone on the counter, opened the family group chat, and took a screenshot of the message showing AUG 13, 3:20 p.m., flight, then another. I exported them as PDFs, making sure the timestamps were visible. I labeled the folder Travel Torch Proof. Inside it, I saved the airline itinerary and digital boarding pass. On a blank page, I typed a short header. Device, iPhone. Location, Houston. TX. Time, 5:12 p.m. Then I added one line beneath it. Integrity is quiet work. The kitchen hummed with the sound of the refrigerator. I opened it, placed the cookies inside, and closed the door gently. The sprinklers hissed outside the window, catching the orange light. My shoes left a faint trail of dust on the rug. I did not look at my phone again. Torch Lake must have been full of laughter by now. Canoes, children's shrieks, clinking glasses. But here, the air was still. Clean. Mine. I opened the Notes app and typed 3 words. Do not argue. Then beneath it, collect facts. I read the line twice, felt the steadiness of it, then locked the screen. No messages would be sent tonight. Silence, after all, can be stronger than speech. I reopened the folder one last time, scanned the documents and renamed it Torch Proof 1. The boarding pass went inside. I turned off the kitchen light. In the reflection of the dark window, I saw a woman not defeated but deliberate, someone who had learned that even love requires evidence. I renamed the folder one last time, locked my phone, and promised myself I'd speak only when the paper could speak first. Morning light slid across the kitchen table, soft and deliberate. I sat with my laptop open, the phone beside it, screen dark but ready. The house was silent except for the air conditioner kicking on. I felt clear, not angry, not broken, just awake. Today wasn't about confrontation. It was about confirmation. I opened my email and typed carefully, "Hello, this is Shannon. I need a copy of the final invoice for the Torch Lake cabin reservation under my card ending in 42 Dantian. Booking code TRH9823. I rechecked each line before sending it to Kenika, the rental host. Then I called the number listed under the receipt. Her voice was pleasant, professional. "Of course, Miss Hall," she said. "I'll send the PDF within the hour." I thanked her and wrote the time of call in a note on my phone. Everything about this needed to be traceable, tidy, unemotional. The paperwork would be my tone of voice. The email arrived at 10:12 a.m. I clicked the attachment and waited for it to load. My name appeared once, under billing address. But the primary guest field, the legal occupant, read Dylan Crow. Below it, his signature, digital, clean. My stomach turned cold. I zoomed in, line by line, dates, total amount, cabin address. Everything matched the reservation I had booked, except for me. My name had been erased from the record, but my card had paid the charge. I printed the invoice and placed it on the desk. The sound of the printer feeding paper was steady, almost reassuring. Then I slid the PDF into my Travel Torch-proof folder, labeling it Invoice Host Copy. For a long moment, I just looked at the words, Primary Guest, Dylan Crow. That single line said more than any argument ever could. It wasn't a mistake. It was intention. To double-check, I opened my phone and scrolled through the family thread. The original text still showed Flight 2378, AUG 13 at 3:20 p.m. Beneath it, my own confirmation emoji, sent weeks ago. I matched that with my calendar entry marked Torch Lake Departure. Every timestamp aligned perfectly. They hadn't changed the plan. They'd changed the record. Later, while taking out the recycling, I saw Maura across the street trimming her hedges. "Morning, Shannon," she called. "Saw your daughter's pictures. Looked like a fun trip." I smiled politely, lifting a hand. "Oh?" I asked lightly. "Yeah," she said. "They posted something last night. Finally just us. Looks beautiful up there." Her words landed like a pin drop inside my chest. I kept my smile in place. "It's a nice spot," I said, then waved and turned toward the house before she could see my face. Inside, I opened Facebook and found the post within seconds. Noura in sunglasses, Dylan behind her. The caption bright and effortless, "Finally just us." The photo tagged the Torch Lake cabin. I screenshotted it, making sure the timestamp and location were visible, then saved it in the same folder under Social Wawa1 Us Only. I took one more screenshot of the comments, smiling emojis, heart icons, and one from her friend, "You deserve the break." I stared at that one the longest. Then I opened a blank note and typed, not a mix-up, a model. The words looked neat, almost mathematical. I closed the phone and set it face down. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was concentration. I'd already learned the most dangerous thing you can do to someone who lies is to document the truth without telling them. Before the day ended, I spread the invoice and the printed text thread across the dining table. I drew a thin red line under the deposit total, then clipped them together. The paper stack was small, but it had weight. I clipped the invoice to our old thread, drew one thin red line under the deposit, and decided the numbers would speak before I ever did. The house was quiet again when I cleared the desk. Afternoon light fell across the wood in long stripes. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and opened a new spreadsheet on my laptop. On the first line, in block letters, I typed and wrote the same phrase, "What I have given." The words steadied me. They didn't ache. They organized. The title wasn't accusation. It was arithmetic. I started filling in columns: date, item, amount, proof. My fingers found a rhythm against the keys. 2 months mortgage when Nora and Dylan were both between jobs. Zara's dental bill after her crown cracked at camp. The daycare balance when the payment bounced. The Torch Lake deposit. A car repair during the winter freeze. Each number had its own small story. But I didn't linger on any of them. I just wrote, totaled, double-checked. The clack of the keys felt like breathing. By the time I printed the sheet, the sun had shifted. I clipped the pages together and laid the stack on the legal pad. It was neat, weighty. I picked up the phone and called Sylvia, the CPA I'd used years ago when settling my late husband's estate. "Sylvia, I need a simple review," I said. "Not an audit, just confirmation that my figures and receipts match." Her tone was warm, practical. "Of course. Bring the packet tomorrow. Ledger, receipts, and any supporting documentation. I'll issue a review letter for your records." I thanked her. We confirmed the checklist. No emotion, no story, just facts. I wrote CPA confirmation scheduled, Friday, 9:30 a.m. in my planner. Next, I logged into the airline support chat. The name that popped up was Kendrick. I typed slowly, precisely. "I need a travel record confirmation for Flight 2378 from Houston, or IAH to Traverse City, TVC. Originally booked under Shannon Hall. I just need the official itinerary and time-stamped server data." Kendrick verified my details, then sent the email while we were still chatting. "No changes were made to your booking after July 3rd, the transcript read. Departure scheduled. Aug 13, 3:20 p.m., under your name." I thanked him and downloaded the PDF immediately, saving it in the Travel Torch Proof folder. There it was, the airline itself closing the door on, "Maybe you misread." I printed the confirmation and began pairing receipts to the ledger lines. Behind each entry, I placed a corresponding proof, the daycare's thank you email, the garage invoice with grease thumbprints, the Torch Lake invoice that now bore someone else's name. I wrote one short note under each. Car wouldn't start after freeze. Covered tow and repair. Daycare called at noon, payment missing. Covered immediately. Cabin deposit, paid by me, name replaced. The stories spoke for themselves. No self-pity, just arithmetic with memory attached. I organized the paperwork into binders. The red one labeled Travel Torch Proof. The blue one, Ledger Review. Each got a typed cover page with today's date, my laptop model, file paths, and print timestamps. When stacked, the two binders made a solid square of color on the desk, evidence disguised as order. I wrote one more line on a yellow sticky note and pressed it onto the monitor. No discussion until binders are complete and reviewed. It wasn't a warning, it was policy. A rule to protect my peace from interruptions pretending to be conversations. Then the phone lit up, a single voicemail badge glowing in the corner of the screen. I didn't press play. Instead, I slid both binders into the drawer, side by side, and rested my hand on the wood until the light faded. I slid the binders shut, saw the voicemail count rise to 1, and decided to hear it only after the paper had a voice of its own. The red and blue binders sat at the edge of the desk, catching what little light the evening left behind. Outside, sprinklers hissed in a steady rhythm, their sound soft against the window pane. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the two binders, Travel Torch Proof and Ledger Review, red for memory, blue for order. They looked almost peaceful, as if they'd always been there. The ache in my chest was quiet, but not gone. Dusk held everything still. I turned my phone over. One notification, just the small red badge. My finger hovered above it longer than it should have. When I finally pressed play, the sound filled the room. Zara's voice, soft but bright, carried across the static. "Grandma, did you make it to the lake? I saved one of your cookies for the car ride. I miss you." There was a pause, a shuffle, and then, faintly, "Love you." The message ended with the sound of her breath catching, half laughter, half question. I didn't cry. I let her voice settle in the air, replaying once in silence. Then I saved the voicemail, labeled it Zara 8:04 p.m., and backed it up to the Anchor folder within the case file. A small act of tenderness, filed like evidence. I didn't reply, though every part of me wanted to. The rule was clear: no conversation until the paper spoke. Even love had to wait its turn. In the kitchen, I rewarmed a single cinnamon cookie, letting the sugar and butter scent rise again. I placed 2 more in a small plastic bag, sealed it, and wrote Zara in neat block letters. It sat on the counter under the low kitchen light. That was my way of saying I love you without breaking any rules. I started to type a text, "Proud of you, I'll bring cookies soon," but stopped before the period. My thumb hovered, then pressed delete. I reached instead for a note card, wrote the same words with a pen, and tucked it inside the tin of cookies. The paper note would wait, safe, until the time was right. That was the difference between impulse and wisdom, knowing which one lasts longer. Back at my desk, I opened the blue binder and turned to the last page of What I Have Given. I added one more line: STEM kit for Zara, 68, delivered last spring. I stapled the receipt to the page. The entry didn't sting, it steadied me. Every number in that ledger was proof of love that never needed permission. The night thinned into a soft hum of crickets. I set 2 alarms, one for Sylvia's office at 9:30, one for the copy shop to print the airline transcript. The to-do list wasn't heavy, it was direction. I glanced at the phone once more. Zara's message was still there, glowing gently. Morning came pale and clean. I placed the cookie bag and the unsent paper note into a small canvas tote. With a black marker, I labeled it, "For Zara," when appropriate. The words felt both firm and kind. I closed the tote, pressed the binders flat with my palm, and promised myself that tomorrow the numbers would move first. The Texas sun was already bright when I pulled into the bank's parking lot. The red and blue binders sat on the passenger seat, stacked like 2 promises. I took a slow breath, checked my checklist, account numbers, PDF copies, letter draft, and stepped into the morning air. My reflection in the glass doors didn't look angry, just settled. Inside the lobby, the air conditioning hummed over the sound of keyboards. I called the dispute specialist from a quiet bench, verified my identity, and opened the chargeback for the Torch Lake deposit. "Reason for dispute?" she asked. I said evenly. "Service tied to misrepresentation. Primary guest changed without authorization." I uploaded the Travel Torch Proof folder and gave her the confirmation number. She thanked me, read back the claim summary, and said the provisional credit would show within 10 days. I wrote the number in my notebook and hung up, feeling something small but real click into place. From the car, I called Meredith, my attorney. Her voice came steady, practiced. I explained what I'd done and asked for a formal demand letter, refund and written explanation, 10-day response window. She typed while we talked. "Attach every proof you've logged," she said. "Invoice, itinerary, the airline record, social screenshots. Keep tone factual." Within minutes, the draft arrived in my inbox. It wasn't loud. It was exact. I printed it at the branch printer near the ATM, each page warm to the touch. Initials at the bottom right corner. By the time I signed the cover sheet, I felt taller in my seat. Back home. I assembled the packet at the kitchen table. The letter first, then labeled Exhibits A through F, invoice, itinerary, airline confirmation, family thread, social post, calendar entry. I slid them into a manila envelope, sealed it, and wrote the recipient address in deliberate block letters. USPS certified mail, return receipt, requested. The green form felt like armor. At the post office, the clerk scanned the barcode and handed me the receipt. The date stamp hit the counter with a small, satisfying thump. "This'll come back with a signature," she said, tapping the green card. I nodded, snapped a photo of the receipt, and placed it into the blue binder pocket labeled Mail Evidence. Outside, a light breeze carried the scent of asphalt and paper. Back in the car, I emailed the PDFs of the stamped envelope and USPS receipt to Meredith and uploaded copies to the bank's case portal. One tracking number, 2 systems. Same truth, everything synced. No redundancy, no drama, just alignment. At home again. I updated a single-page tracker. Item, C, date, status, next step, each box filled with clean handwriting. The rhythm soothed me. I placed the new receipts under the divider labeled Mail Evidence and closed both binders. The house was quiet except for the ceiling fan. My phone buzzed once, just a message preview from Nora's group chat. I didn't open it. Instead, I opened notes and drafted 3 sentences. A clear boundary, no defense, no blame. Going forward, all financial support will be documented and mutually signed. Emotional requests must come through direct conversation, not text. This is our new policy. I read it twice, then saved it under drafts. Family. The line between reaction and leadership had never felt so thin or so solid. With the tracking number pinned above my desk, I drafted the 3 sentences that would become my family's new policy and saved them for morning. By 8 The house was still except for the faint tick of the wall clock. I placed my phone on Do Not Disturb, opened both binders, and poured a cup of coffee. The action tracker waited beside the keyboard. A single line highlighted, Send Future Support Policy. I gave myself 10 minutes, no more, to write it. The way I used to time work memos before retirement. Deadlines keep emotion honest. The first line came easily. Respect. The second, inclusion. The third, transparency. I wrote, I fund only events where I am included and respected. Support goes directly to children or documented needs, not intermediaries. Disputes are handled through calm discussion or mediation, not text arguments. It looked simple, almost too plain. But that was the point. The rules had to live on their own, without commentary. No exclamation marks, no tone to misread, before sending. I forwarded the draft to Meredith for review. Her reply arrived 2 minutes later. Clear. Send. Keep it 3 lines. I smiled at the screen. Short, direct, like she always was. The approval steadied me. Subject line. Future Support Policy. Recipients, Nora, Delin. CC, myself. No attachments, no history, no apology. I hit send. The email blinked into the outbox and vanished. For a second, the silence that followed was almost physical, a release that didn't need sound. I moved on to the next item. I opened my previous email chain with Kenika, the cabin host, and began a new message. Good morning. Could you please update the Torch Lake invoice and itinerary to reflect the following note? Third-party payer, Shannon, last name. Please leave the original primary guest unchanged for record accuracy. My card ending 1138 was used for the deposit on June 28th. I reread it for tone, factual, neutral, and pressed send. The day slowed after that. I folded laundry in cycles, watered the geraniums, checked email at 20-minute intervals. The house smelled faintly of detergent and brewed coffee. Waiting didn't feel like waiting anymore. It felt like preparation. Near 11, the alert pinged. Torch Lake Cabin, amended itinerary attached. I opened the PDF. On page 1, under Notes. The words appeared: third-party payer, Shannon, last name, the billing date, address, and original booking number aligned perfectly. I highlighted the line, saved it as amended itinerary, PDF inside travel torch proof, printed one copy, and slipped it behind the old invoice in the red binder. The correction wasn't dramatic, but it was permanent. My contribution now existed in the same font as theirs, recognized, logged, beyond dispute. I forwarded the updated file to Meredith with a single word: filed. Then I wrote a note on a yellow sticky and pressed it against the binder cover. Speak less. Show paper. Outside. The late morning light had turned sharp across the porch tiles. I closed the laptop, feeling both lighter and firmer, as if every documented truth carried a small, private piece. By late afternoon, the doorbell camera caught a familiar car rolling into my driveway, so I set the binder on the porch table and left the front door locked. The camera feed lit up before I even heard the tires. Their silver SUV turned into the driveway, sunlight bouncing off its hood. I watched it roll to a stop, 3 shapes behind the tinted glass. On the porch table, the red and blue binders waited side by side like calm witnesses. The bricks still held afternoon heat, and the wind carried the faint hiss of sprinklers from down the street. I didn't move right away. I let the stillness stretch, because for once, I wanted them to walk into my setting. The bell rang twice. I opened the door halfway. "Let's sit out here," I said evenly. "It's cooler." They hesitated, glancing past me toward the living room they were used to entering without asking. Then, maybe sensing the shift, they stepped onto the porch. Nora chose the far chair. Her purse clutched tight. Dylan leaned against the railing, arms crossed, that half-smile ready, the one he used when he thought he held the upper hand. He started with a sigh. "We just came to clear the air." "Mom, you overreacted." I reached for the top binder, the red one, and slid it across the table until it rested between us. "Then let's keep the air clear by using facts." The wind flipped a corner of paper as I opened the first tab. Flight confirmation, ledger entries, amended itinerary, certified mail receipt. I spoke quietly but firmly, the way you read instructions aloud when someone else refuses to. "This is what happened. These are the dates. These are the signatures." Nora stared at the papers, blinking too fast. Dylan's smirk twitched, not quite holding. The sound of pages turning was louder than our breathing. I didn't rush. The rhythm, tap, page, tap, did the talking. He finally broke. "You're keeping score like a bank ledger," he snapped. "Only of what I've already paid," I said, meeting his eyes. He scoffed and pulled out his phone. "Let's just call the airline right now, see if your version checks out." He put the call on speaker. I folded my hands. Silent. The rep answered, cheerful and neutral. Dylan fed him the details. "Yes, sir," the voice said after a pause. "Our system shows no modification to the original booking, August 13th, 3:20 p.m. Under the traveler name Shannon, last name. Timestamp confirms same-day issue. No later change recorded." The silence that followed had weight. "So," I said quietly, "you changed the date and forgot that paper remembers." Nora looked down. Dylan's shoulders sagged just enough for truth to slip in. I didn't press. I didn't need to. The binders were open, the evidence tidy and calm. There was nothing left to argue with. They murmured something about miscommunication, and we didn't mean... Their voices already thinning as they rose from their chairs. I stayed seated, fingers resting lightly on the binder's edge. The moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like balance returning after too long tilted. When the gate clicked shut behind their car, the porch went quiet again. I closed both binders, poured a small glass of iced tea, and exhaled. Paper had spoken louder than anger ever could. The house was quiet when I pressed play. Zara's voice filled the room, soft, careful, 13 years old, but already knowing how to cushion a truth. "Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you're busy." The words landed gently, but the silence that followed hurt more than any accusation. Her message was short enough to fit inside a breath, yet it stayed echoing through the whole house. I sat at my desk, one hand on the mouse, the other on the side of my face, listening again until her voice turned into a heartbeat I could almost touch. I turned toward the framed photos on the shelf. Zara at 8, dusted with flour from the cinnamon cookies we made every Christmas. Me holding the cooling rack, pretending not to see her sneak one. It was never about being included. I whispered to the picture. It was about being remembered. The doorbell chimed softly. When I opened it, Maura stood there, holding a small aluminum pie plate under her arm. "I made too much again." She smiled. "Blueberry, you guessed it." We sat on the porch steps, forks and napkins between us, the late sun sliding down behind the oaks. "You can love them," Maura said, "without funding them." Her words were gentle but heavy, the kind of truth that doesn't need arguing. I laughed quietly, not from humor, but recognition. That might just be the lesson. When the pie was half gone, I went back inside, rinsed the fork, and pulled the legal pad labeled "What I Have Given" toward me. I drew a clean line across the top page and wrote, in firm strokes, "Notice of intent to reclaim cabin deposit, $3,800. I dialed Meredith, my attorney. "Keep it factual," she said. Polite, brief, but clear. Her voice steadied me more than the coffee ever could. Under her guidance, I wrote, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. last name." This letter serves as formal notice that I intend to reclaim the full deposit for the Torch Lake property. Documentation enclosed, respectfully. Shannon, last name. No drama, no apology. Just proof, printed and aligned in neat stacks. At sunset, I drove to the post office. The parking lot was mostly empty, lights flickering in the heat. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and rain. I slid the letter across the counter. "Certified mail," I said. The clerk stamped the receipt. A single solid sound, final and clean. I signed the form, pocketed the green slip, and stepped back into the evening. By the time I reached home, the sky had gone soft gray. I set the kettle on and leaned against the counter while it hissed. For years, I confused silence with peace. I thought, now I know peace has a backbone. I poured the tea, let it steep, and turned off the lights one by one until only the glow from the porch spilled through the blinds. The house felt lighter, as if every paper I'd signed had peeled a layer of fear away. Just as I set the cup down, my phone buzzed, an email notification lighting the dark screen. Subject, response requested, from Dellen's office. I stared at it for a long second, feeling the same old pull toward dread. Then something steadier rose instead. "He thinks it's still about money," I murmured. The screen light reflected back at me, calm, unreadable. Then I whispered, "Let's talk on paper." His response had come in overnight. I opened it with my first cup of coffee, steam curling over the keyboard. Dellen's email was short, smug, a paragraph about how withholding access to the kids would continue unless I reimbursed quietly. I smiled. The same man who'd laughed at the airport was now writing like a debt collector. I didn't reply. Paper would answer, not anger. On the bank's dispute portal, a green check appeared beside provisional credit issued. The note below it read, "Merchant has 10 business days to respond with documentation." I uploaded the certified mail receipt from last night's notice of intent, labeling it clearly, Torch Lake, Reclaim Process. Step 2. The leverage had shifted, and the countdown clock wasn't mine anymore. By mid-morning, a new email arrived from Kenica, the cabin host. Subject: Update, Policy Enforcement. Due to primary guest mismatch and subsequent correction, associated penalties have been assessed to the primary guest's card. Deposit attribution corrected to third-party payer, Shannon last name. Below the text were line items: policy fee, late edit surcharge, credit adjustment. A silent document trail of cause and effect. The exclusion that began with laughter had now landed as financial consequence. I didn't celebrate. I simply saved the PDF into the red binder and wrote a single note in the margin. Accountability, not revenge. When the screen dimmed, I opened my own support policy. The second line stared back at me. Support goes directly to children, not intermediaries. I thought of Zara's bright eyes, the way she once held her school's science fair ribbon like it was an Oscar, quietly. I pulled up her school's portal. Tuition links, library fund, STEM lab fees. I found her student ID in an old email and copied it into a fresh note titled Direct Support. Love. I decided wasn't being withdrawn, just rerouted where it could grow. I called the bursar's office. A woman named Louise answered, calm and precise. Yes, we do accept direct contributions from grandparents, she said. Would you like to specify the allocation? STEM lab and library, I replied, and please note, donor acknowledgement to Zara, last name. Within minutes, an email pinged back, payment confirmation and 529 setup link. I filled out the forms, my name as owner, Zara as beneficiary, a monthly contribution that would arrive like clockwork. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. I forwarded the bursar confirmation and 529 setup to Meredith under the subject line. Filed, direct support established. No CC to the family, no commentary, just the record. Then I added a final note to my binder. I support children. I do not fund exclusion. At the printer. The acknowledgement letter emerged on soft ivory paper. Dear Miss, last name. Thank you for your contribution to the STEM program in honor of Zara. Your support inspires our students to dream bigger. I smiled as I folded it, sealing it in a small envelope for Zara's scrapbook someday. The house was still, only the low hum of the air conditioning in the background. Peace, this time, felt earned, not given. A new email arrived just as I slid the envelope into the blue binder's pocket. Subject: Mediation session. Proposed dates and guidelines. 3 rules listed in the preview: respect, inclusion, transparency. I stared at the words. My own policy reflected back through someone else's professionalism, and clicked accept invitation. Finally, we would talk where paper sits at the center of the table. The binders waited on my desk like quiet soldiers. I added a 1-page summary, dates, outcomes, nothing emotional, and slid it on top. The notice of intent sat sealed beneath, unsigned but ready. Preparation, not panic. At 10 a.m., a new email arrived from Ruth, the mediator. The subject line read, Session Rules and Confirmation. Inside were the same 3 words I had written weeks earlier: respect, inclusion, transparency. Beneath them, a note, no interruptions. 60-minute cap. documents prioritized over dialogue. I exhaled through a small, satisfied smile. It felt like the world, at least this small civic corner of it, had caught up with my policy. By early afternoon, I parked in front of the Mediation Center, a glass building tucked between a credit union and a library. Inside, the waiting room hummed with the soft tick of a clock and the faint citrus smell of disinfectant. Ruth greeted us with the calm tone of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "We'll meet in room 2, she said. The space was neutral and bright, round table, glass wall, a copier in the corner. I chose the chair nearest the copier. Dellen and Nora took the far side, flanked by their legal pads and bottled water. I kept only my summary sheet and the 2 binders. Ruth began, "This is a voluntary mediation regarding a family financial misunderstanding. Let's begin with brief summaries." I spoke first, voice steady. "I fund what I'm invited to. I support children directly. Disputes stay on paper." 3 sentences. No accusation, just boundaries with breathing room. Dellen shifted in his chair. "We just thought it was the 12th, he said. "Mom, you didn't check the thread." Ruth looked at him. "Do you have that thread?" He hesitated. I slid a copy of the amended itinerary and airline confirmation toward her. She scanned them, nodded once, and walked them to the copier. Paper hummed louder than anyone's voice. When Ruth returned, she placed 3 copies on the table. "This is clear documentation," she said. Silence filled the gap. Nora's hand twisted her bracelet. I kept my eyes on the summary sheet, the way a pilot keeps to her instruments in fog. When reimbursement came up, they danced around the word. "Maybe we can just move on," Dellen offered. I reached into my folder and slid a sealed envelope labeled "Notice of Intent, Draft," across to Ruth. "This exists," I said quietly. "It's not filed. The request is reimbursement and a written acknowledgement of exclusion. That's all." Dellen's jaw flexed. Ruth nodded, noting the date on her pad. "Acknowledged," she said. We moved on to what she called terms to return, conditions for family repair. Her voice stayed measured, reading from her notes. Item 1, reimburse the deposit within 10 business days. Item 2, for any future events funded by Shannon, her name must appear on primary payer or guest notes. Item 3, future support flows directly to child or school. Item 4, if breached, mediation resumes and the notice may be filed. No grand speeches followed, just pens clicking, paper sliding, and the soft squeak of signatures. I signed first. They signed last. The entire process took 48 minutes. Outside, the Texas sun had tilted west, warm and forgiving. I drove home in quiet traffic, a faint breeze nudging through the open window. On the passenger seat, the mediation summary rested beside the red binder, its corners catching the light. For the first time in months, I circled a date on my own calendar, nothing to do with them. Something as small as peace deserves its own appointment. By late morning, sunlight filled the porch like forgiveness. I set out glasses of iced tea, a plate of cinnamon cookies, and 3 paperbacks with folded corners. Maura, Irene, and Lila arrived carrying dog-eared novels and easy laughter. No one mentioned Michigan or family. For the first time in months, the air around me felt normal, just pages turning and spoons clinking against glass. During a lull in the discussion, Maura leaned over. "You look lighter," she whispered. I smiled. "It's just Saturday," I said, and meant it. When the porch cleared, I rinsed the glasses, dried my hands, and walked to the home office. The red and blue binders waited on the shelf, but today I pulled down the white one labeled Estate. Meredith's email link blinked on my screen. Beneficiary amendment. Signature required. I clicked it open. The form was clean, almost cold. Lines, percentages, beneficiaries. I filled them in quietly, half to the Grandmothers Network, a local nonprofit that helps older women restart after loss, half to Zara, direct through her 599 plan and any future scholarships in her name. No intermediaries, no family filters. Meredith called for a quick verification. "All set?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Simple and final. Within minutes, DocuSign flashed completed. The confirmation PDF slid into the folder. Estate amendments. The printer hummed, paper warm, faintly smelling of ink and closure. By 2:00, I was at the bank. The lobby smelled of coffee and new carpet. A young officer greeted me, cheerful and polite. "I need to close a joint account," I said, handing over my ID, "and stop all automatic transfers." He typed briskly, printed forms, stamped dates in blue ink. "There," he said, sliding copies across the counter. "Closed as of today, and any new approvals must be in person." "Perfect," I said. Outside, the heat hit like a wall, but I felt cool inside. Boundaries weren't walls. They were windows that could finally open. When I got home, my phone pinged. A 5:29 acknowledgement. Next contribution scheduled. Attached was a donor letter template addressed to Zara. The line read, "This contribution supports your continued curiosity and learning." I printed it and placed it beside the cinnamon cookie recipe card waiting on my desk. Evening fell soft and amber. I filed the bank and estate confirmations, then placed the white binder beside the red and blue ones. A trinity of order, proof, ledger, legacy. Before turning out the light, I slipped the recipe card into an envelope marked, "For Zara," when appropriate. I didn't seal it. Hope. I'd learned. Breathes better. Unsealed. At dusk, the mailbox clacked shut, and inside lay a green card, signed, dated, and returning to my hands. The green card was the last piece. I laid it flat beside the demand letter, smoothing its corners with the side of my hand. The small signature, the date, the faint postal ink, everything sat in perfect order. I didn't need a word from them anymore. The paper spoke clearly enough. The process had finished what emotion once tried to fix. A soft ping from my phone drew my eyes up. A new bank alert blinked at the top of the screen. $3,800 deposited. Memo. Torch Lake deposit. I exhaled through my nose, not smiling yet. Moments later, an email followed, acknowledging the oversight regarding the trip. "We appreciate your understanding. No excuses, no embellishment, just acknowledgement." I took screenshots, saved them as PDFs, and filed them into travel torch-proof resolution. My hand hovered a moment over the red binder before I closed it. Satisfaction didn't feel like triumph. It felt like oxygen finally returning after a long dive. Then came the letter. I wrote the title in neat block letters, "The Truth," line by line. I retraced the arc, airport gate, mocking call, the folders, the mediation, the quiet binders. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence to Zara. "You were never leverage. You were my reason to stay steady." I dated it, signed my full name, and slipped it into an envelope marked, "Read only if you want my side." I sealed it and placed it in my white binder, under estate statements. The sound of the drawer closing felt like punctuation, a truth kept, not performed. By Friday afternoon, I had one last task. The mediation terms said any exchange had to be direct and calm, so I drove to Zara's school, waited at the curb, and when Nora appeared, I stepped out with a small tin and a folded receipt. "Cookies," I said softly, "for her project." Nora nodded, eyes uncertain. "Thank you, Mom." "That's all right. I answered, stepping back. No extra words, no moral, just care, handed properly. 2 days later, the Texas sun turned the highway into a ribbon of silver. I drove west on I-10, thermos beside me, windows cracked, Canyon Lake shimmered blue through the trees, at a quiet dock. I sat with my journal and wrote a single line. I am not waiting anymore. The air was sharp with cedar. Ducks drifted near the pier, indifferent to my small revelation. That night, back home, I shelved my 3 binders in perfect order: red, proof; blue, ledger; white, legacy. A recipe card for cinnamon cookies rested on top like a bookmark. I left it there, light from the porch lamp spilling across the cover edges. The house felt lighter, too. Not empty, just right-sized. My phone was silent, the sky still. I looked toward the dark window and whispered, half to myself, half to the quiet, they can land wherever they like. I have, finally, landed in my life. When I look back now, I realize this story was never just about a missed flight or a broken family plan. It was about reclaiming respect without raising your voice. In this country, we're taught that love and boundaries can live in the same house. You can forgive without forgetting. You can stand tall without shouting. If you're watching this, maybe you've carried quiet pain too, someone who took advantage of your kindness or treated your silence as weakness. I hope my story reminds you that dignity isn't given. It's practiced, one calm decision at a time. Paper or proof may not solve every wound, but truth, written or lived, always finds its place. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had to draw a boundary with someone you love? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this video touched your heart, type 1 below or let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this. Stories of courage, healing, and quiet strength from everyday people across America. Because sometimes, the calmest voices carry the deepest lessons.